It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth, president and founder of Secure Estate Management. Take charge of your financial future with your personal bank. Now, here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show, and I just got to say one thing is, wow, how things can change in a very short period of time. I'm going to be sharing a lot of economic information, current information, and my focus here, my goal is going to be to focus on credible sources, experts, if you will, and try to strike a balance in terms of what is turning into a very serious global pandemic medically, and, of course, a financial crisis. At the same time, without causing a panic or fear in people. And that's going to be a fine line. I'm going to do my best to try to do that. So hang on, put on your seatbelts. We're going to cover a lot of information today and try to cut through a lot of the noise and make some make some clear and intelligent decisions for the future. So the bottom line is we pretty much all know at this point that coronavirus has created a global pandemic. And, of course, it's primarily a health issue. And, of course, we want everybody to stay healthy, practice good health habits, social distancing, do those things so that we can, protect those that are, we don't make it worse, if you know what I'm saying. And, obviously, by closing businesses and schools and travel restrictions, all those kinds of things are medically necessary to reduce the impact medically. But at the same time, of course, it negatively affects the economy. Now, obviously, the medical issues are far more important. Somebody's health is, paramount, of course. But this is Money Radio. And our focus, of course, is on money, on your money. And we want to really discuss and focus on the financial impact because here's the thing. If money can cause a lot of it can be an emotionally charged subject. I've worked with a lot of folks, it's over 22 years as a financial advisor and business owner, and talk to people about money, and it's surprising how often people have strong emotions associated with money. And, it's commonly shared, about fear and greed move the markets and all these kind of different things. And it's true in a lot of ways. We're human beings, we have emotions. And we can't discount those emotions. My wife always talks about that. When you feel something, it's real. It's real for you. And I don't want to discount those feelings. Again, in an emotionally charged time like this, where it clearly looks like if we're not already in a recession, going into one, just about every financial expert is stating that. So what can we do? Well, first of all, again, you got to get in that money mindset. Again, emotion, self-worth, and sense of safety have a huge impact on how we interact with our money. And that's true even for the financially savvy among us. So, you want to focus on the credible facts as much as possible to make healthy and positive money decisions, particularly during this time. So what I'm going to focus on are some facts from credible sources. And one of those questions, there's two questions I've been getting probably the most frequent with folks that I've been talking to recently. And that is, how bad do you think this financial crisis will get? And the second one is, how long will it last? Will the financial impact last? And like I said, later I'm going to talk about some practical financial steps you can do now and how to take care of future activities and create long-term financial security. But the thing is, how bad will it get? That's the thing. The speed of how fast this has happened, this turnaround. We had a strong economy. We had record low unemployment. We had the stock markets and various markets were at or near all-time highs. I mean, things were good, and not very long ago. And it's incredible. It's amazing how incredibly fast that has all changed. In fact, the economic news, here's the thing. How bad will it get? That's really impossible to predict until new infections stop, until we get past this medical crisis. That's the cause. That's the problem. And really, until we have a solution from the medical standpoint in terms of new infections reducing, or we get an effective vaccine that prevents this, there's no way to really know. And it's that uncertainty that's causing the volatility and everything else that's going on, the mass layoffs that are occurring, everything else. It's that uncertainty and that unknown that businesses and people, jobs, everything else are having to deal with. So, again, it's impossible to predict how bad it'll get, but here's the things that we're already seeing to be true. from an economic standpoint, the economic news is historically bad, almost across the board. There's very few exceptions. We've got a lot of records that we're breaking or preparing to break soon that it looks like, things like worse since the Great Depression kind of records, GDP, gross domestic product, okay? I'm going to share in a bit some details on this, but most of the experts are predicting somewhere second quarter of somewhere between 15 and 30% decline. Unemployment. I've seen estimates from all kinds of sources, anywhere in the 20 to 30% range, which again approach Great Depression type numbers. The Treasury Secretary recently spoke about we could have 20% unemployment soon. We have a new CARES Act that's passed that should help alleviate some of that, which is great for those people. They receive those benefits. It helps stop the bleeding, if you will. Of course, that kind of benefit, for a business or for an individual, enhanced unemployment, for example, doesn't replace jobs, and for a business, doesn't replace customers, but it helps get through this time period, if you know what I'm saying. So, also, as most of us know, we've seen the stock market decline 30% in 30 days. Those are Great Depression type of economic impacts. Now, I want to state here, I'm an optimistic person. Do I think we're going into another Great Depression? And my personal opinion is no. We're not in the same economic situation. The causes are different. We have safeguards in place, things like FDIC and various things that protect folks, monies and things like that. So I don't think we're going to have that type of situation, but it is going to be historically bad. And how bad will it get? Well, this is an article. It's titled 7 Financial Heavyweights Forecast. If you want to go and see these articles, you can go to yourpersonalbank.com. We have them posted under articles. I'd highly recommend checking them out. But Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, PIMCO, Morgan Stanley, UBS, in this article is one of the best ones I've seen. Their economists, it's the predictions that their economists made for second quarter GDP and for going forward for the rest of the year. And bottom line is the range is between 15% on the high end and 30% on the low end. I think it was J.P. Morgan on that article had more optimistic predictions. But, of course, they have revised those since they put the article out, and I think they're the ones saying negative 30%. But that's what they're predicting. Now, to put this in perspective, because numbers are one thing, but how do you put this in perspective? Well, during the 2008-09 Great Recession, which is the worst economic situation most of us that are alive remember, the worst quarter during that recession was negative 8.4%. So, again, I'm not trying to be a doomsday or a fearmonger or anything like that, but you want to, people need to face the facts and recognize what potentially is going to happen to make good decisions, make sober decisions. And I guess what it comes down to, and I've had some people say when I share with them some of these things that, emotionally or mentally they're not ready to hear, frankly, as I stated earlier, I have a great faith in people. And we as people, individuals, and as a country, we've been through tough times, There's a generation called the Greatest Generation who went through the Great Depression and World War II. Those certainly were tough times, but they rose to the occasion. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we're going to go through some tough economic and medical times here. I think that's fairly clear. But I also have great faith in people, and I've seen some tremendous things already where, yes, it'll be tough. Yes, it'll be painful, certainly in the short term. But we'll get through this. And so to put things in perspective, like I said, not to panic, but to look at it with a sober, eye, the predictions are GDP is going to drop 2 to 3 times worse in the second quarter of this year than it did through the Great Depression, the Great Recession, 2008-09. That's very significant. And so we've got to be prepared for that type of thing. Now, I'm going to talk about a lot more information, again, to help navigate this financial crisis, and how can you take practical steps now, and also how you can plan to take advantage of opportunities when this is all over. Stay tuned.
For more information on your personal bank, call Ference at 866-515-6280 or online at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to Your Personal Bank Show with President and Founder of Secure Estate Management, Ference Toth.
Welcome back. In the first segment, we were talking about some of the current economic situations, how rapid it's happened, how significant it's been. And also, we're talking about some historically bad economic information, but also how we'll get through it. It's one of those things where, yes, it can be short-term painful, but I'm optimistic that we'll get through it too. So there's an article in the first segment. I highly recommend you check it out. And if you want to, go to yourpersonalbank.com. We have it posted under our article section, current news. It's called 7 Financial Heavyweights Forecast. Probably the best article I've read, in my opinion, in terms of answering about how bad will this financial crisis get. And all the heavyweights, if you will, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, B of A, Morgan Stanley, UBS, all of them, 7 of them. Basically, their economists predicted the second quarter GDP to be somewhere between negative 15 and negative 30%. They're unanimous in it's going to be bad. The question is how bad. And to put things in perspective, of course, the Great Recession of 08-09, the worst quarter then was negative 8.4%. So all the predictions are for basically 2 to 3 times worse than that. So we're talking about historically bad numbers. Again, not to cause fear in people, but to let them know, hey, what to expect, what's realistic, what the experts believe are going to happen, so you can plan accordingly. Now, the other question that I'm getting asked constantly is, how long will the financial impact last? Now, that one's even harder to answer as far as the one how bad it's going to be, because we're currently still in the midst of the medical crisis. Again, this is caused, as we all know, by a coronavirus pandemic. And the real solution, the ultimate solution is new cases drop significantly, so we're getting a handle on it, or there's a vaccine that's available that basically prevents it or deals with it. Until those things happen, or one of those things happen, we're going to be having a crisis or a situation that's going to affect money and our economy. But there's some good articles talking about how long some of the leading experts and governments and various people, medical experts throughout the world, think this is going to be. And there's an article in the Sydney Morning Herald called Herd Immunity. Again, go to yourpersonalbank.com, check out articles and current news. You can see it, download it, pass it on, whatever. And there's a lot of people talking about, there's a chart in that article. It's from Oxford and Imperial College. It's on the last page. And they've ran some simulations, and these are being used by governments around the world to make policy decisions currently. And the scenarios it's computer simulations in terms of infection rates and how long and all these kinds of things. And it's very interesting because it points out there's basically 3 different scenarios that it lays out of what governments can do to help prevent this. And in the simulation, it talks about, well, if they do nothing, obviously it'll burn through the population. A lot of people get sick. Unfortunately, a good number of people are estimated would die from it. But it'd be over in a few months. Okay? So it would burn through the population, if you will. The simulation shows of a period about 5 or 6 months, start to finish, in that scenario. Then you have the social distancing, which flattens the curve. And, of course, it's necessary, medically necessary, to do social distancing so that fewer people get it, and we don't overwhelm our medical facilities or capability of handling this. Like I said, I have a great faith and optimistic faith in the American people. And right now, a lot of people are attributing this to being on the home front in World War II with shortages. Heck, you can't find. It's kind of funny, but it's not. You can't find toilet paper anywhere, and so we have shortages. And it's a lot like they're saying, World War II, where there were shortages of different things. The heroes in those days, of course, were the men and women fighting in the war. Today, our frontline soldiers, if you will, are the medical people. And they're our heroes of the day, and the scientists who are figuring out how to attack or battle this virus. And we should, of course, applaud them and encourage and support them as much as possible. Plus, those folks who are still showing up to work at the grocery stores and the various things that are out there, I'm seeing some great positive things about people helping take care of the rest of us, and they're putting their health on the line. Let's face it, in many cases. And those people should be, applauded and encouraged and supported. So my point is, be a little nicer to the checkout person next time when you're at the store, because they're in a tough position right now. But anyway, by creating social distancing, back to this chart, it does flatten the curve. Not as many people get it, not as many people die. But then as restrictions are lifted later, as it kind of clears up, they're predicting a second wave. Now, the problem is, if that does happen, that process start to finish is about a year. So this pandemic, from the medical standpoint, a lot of medical professionals have echoed a lot of these things. We can be looking anywhere from a few months, 3, 4, 5 months, to up to a year. Some of the other things that kind of echo that in terms of answering the question of how long will all this last, how will this impact our economy, the U.S. virus plan that just came out recently anticipates an 18-month pandemic and widespread shortages. And it's unclassified, but it was marked official use only, not for public distribution or release, but then was shared by the New York Times and posted online, so go figure. And it points out the one thing, I don't know if 18 months is how long it's going to be. That's what the U.S. government virus plan states. But, it does state in there the spread and severity of COVID-19 will be difficult to forecast and characterize, which I agree with completely because we're in uncharted territory. It's really, again, it's the unknowns that's affecting the financial and the economy, not knowing. If you're a business owner, if you've had a reduction of income for your business or you've been shut down because you're not essential, when are you going to be able to open back up? When are you going to be able to generate business again? When are you going to have customers? How much, how many employees should you keep on? And even with the various, the CARES Act that's been passed and stuff to help offset some of those costs, it's still a question mark for those business owners. Of course, that affects the employees and their jobs. Are they going to still have a job? How long are they going to have a job? Those things are just unknowns that affect our economy in a dramatic way. My point is, another thing, how long will the financial impact last? Well, just very recently, President Trump even came out and said that he extended social distancing measures to the end of April. And in his press conference talked about, I think we'll be coming out of this by, getting better by June 1st. Well, that's several months. This all kind of started in March. So you're looking at a 3-4 month time frame, even from the president. So, and again, he stated he was in consultations extensively with the medical professionals to determine the best course of action. Okay? So I think from the medical professional standpoint, that seems to be, somewhere around at least several months, 3, 4, 5 months, it sounds like, to upwards of a year range, again, with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknowns in terms, again, will therapeutics or a vaccine be created? Of course, that can be a game changer, right, on any of those things. The bottom line is this. In terms of the financial impact, the longer it lasts, obviously, the more serious economic damage will be done. As I started to say earlier, how many businesses are going to fail? How many jobs are going to be lost? And those have more serious long-term implications, which can impact a recovery period. So, gosh, I hope for everybody's sake, I hope this is short, it gets over quick, and we can get back to business as usual. The longer it goes, though, the less likely that becomes. So this is the thing to understand. No one knows. We don't have the answer yet. It's too soon to tell. So as I always talk about when I'm meeting with clients and planning and doing financial planning and retirement planning and various things like that, one of the statements I always say is, look, let's plan for the worst and, of course, hope for the best. And that way, if you can handle the worst-case scenario, and in planning, that's always a good idea. It's a wise move. If you can handle the worst-case scenario, it takes a lot of stress off because you can handle it. Not that that's what you want, but you can deal with it. And then, of course, scenario that ends up being better than that becomes icing on the cake, and that's what we're, of course, all hoping for. Stay tuned to the next segment. I'm going to talk about an article that I found was awesome, titled 10 Facts You Must Know About Recessions.
For more information on your personal bank, call Ference at 866-515-6280 or online at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to Your Personal Bank Show with President and Founder of Secure Estate Management, Ference Toth.
Welcome back. We're covering a lot of information today. Unfortunately, a lot of it somber economic news. But again, I feel like not to be negative or pessimistic. Actually, I'm quite an optimistic person. I'm excited about the long-term future going forward. It's just the short-term we got to get through. It appears more and more likely that's going to be very significant, very serious. And again, I feel like knowing the facts empowers people. If you know what you're dealing with, as we talk about in planning all the time, I was talking about this in the last segment, when I meet with clients and I'm talking to them about retirement planning and financial planning, their future, we talk a lot about, hey, what's the worst case scenario? Let's plan for that, and of course, hope for the best. And if you can handle the worst case scenario, that relieves a lot of stress, it relieves a lot of anxiety, and of course, we hope it's better than that, but you can live with it. And I think that's where I'm coming from here today, is knowing what's probably going to happen, at least what the experts are telling us and what we're seeing happening in front of our eyes, being prepared for it, not panicking about it, but just being prepared for it, making intelligent decisions helps. And in the first segment, I was talking about, a question I'm getting asked all the time is, how bad will this financial crisis, the recession, if you will, how bad it's going to get? And I talked about a great article, 7 heavyweights forecast, number of the major financial institutions, JP Morgans and Goldman Sachs of the world, they're economists. That's article. You can go to yourpersonalbank.com, check it out. Go to articles, current news, download it, pass it on, whatever. And it's a great article sharing what their economists think is going to happen. Second quarter GDP, they're all predicting somewhere between a 50 to 30% decline in GDP. To put that in perspective, again, the last recession, the Great Recession, 08-09, the worst quarter we had there was negative 8.4. So the experts are predicting 2 to 3 times worse than that. So, folks, this is going to be painful for a lot of people. Now, for others, it's not. And this is another thing to understand. I'm going to talk about facts about recessions, but here's the thing. People are going to have very different experiences through this economic and medical crisis. What do I mean by that? Well, it really comes down to cash flow or income. If your income is basically guaranteed or very consistent and steady, irregardless of economic conditions, you're not going to feel the pinch, if you will. See, it's not about accumulation. That's one of the things I share with people all the time in thinking about money. And this is a basic financial concept that becomes imperative and becomes abundantly clear during crises like this. See, the value or how much money is in an account value is not nearly as important. I mean, it's nice to have accumulation, don't get me wrong, but it's not nearly as important as how much income can be generated from the assets or your assets, and how much of that income is going to occur or come in consistently, steady, or guaranteed even. So folks today that thought even a month or so ago that their income was steady, consistent, have learned otherwise, the harsh way. Who would have known that if you were in the travel industry, for example, or entertainment or any of those, a lot of those industries, some of those folks don't have jobs today, and they thought they were very secure. Other areas are going to obviously generally do well. Anything in the medical arena, anything in the staples, food, and the various things that we need are going to clearly, probably do well. And in fact, a great example, well known, is Amazon's hiring, because they're home delivery stuff. So if somebody was working at a restaurant or working in the, the travel industry or any of those kinds of things where their income, their business, their job's been lost, if you will, they can move into a different arena. But my point is, some people are going to have very different experiences through this, just like they did through the Great Recession in 08-09. It was dependent on your income. If your income was consistent, you had good income coming in through it, yes, your account values might have dropped for a while, but if you don't need access to those funds, for example, or those assets for a number of years, not a big deal. You don't have a lot of stress, don't need to worry about it a whole lot. A different experience is somebody I talked to literally this past week who listened to the radio show, interested in what I was sharing about moving to safety, having some of the buckets of money, if you will, in a safer place. I talked about that in the previous shows that encourage you to check out at yourpersonalbank.com. I know the March 24th show, for example, I shared on that a lot. Anyway, he really liked the idea. 64 years old, about a year from retirement, worked for a major company, had access to, he had different monies invested. And we talked about some of the safer money buckets, maybe repositioning some of those monies to get a better return, because the sad part about a lot of the safer money options these days, of course, is the extremely low interest rate environment. That's the other challenge that's been out there. The CDs and cash and even T-bills and various things that are out there are paying extremely low rates because of the low interest rate environment. So we talked about using a personal bank or perhaps an annuity, for example, to get higher rates with some guarantees. Decent rate of return, got guaranteed contractual guarantee at 4% right now, for example, currently paying 5%. In today's world, today's interest environment, that's pretty darn good. He liked the idea, looked at his accounts, found out, and he texted me back saying, I'm in 100% growth stocks. Well, that goes back to the Vanguard study I was talking about in the previous couple of shows, where a recent study in Vanguard shared that 83% of folks nearing or in retirement, do-it-yourselfers, had 83% of their money in equities and less than 20%, only 17%, in bonds or a bond type, interest-bearing type of accounts, which was way out of whack to what their original plan was or their goals, because, of course, equities had done so well for so long, and they let them run, so they increased in value, which, again, worked for a while. But they got undisciplined. They got away from their risk profile of what was important. It's not during the good times that those things are important. You can get sloppy, if you will, during good times, and it kind of everything works because everything, rising tide raises all ships, right? It's during these crisis times that discipline comes in to play big time. And this is where somebody's risk profile, in terms of are they really at the proper risk profile for them at this time, really comes to light. And as I was starting to say, people have very different experiences through a recession. And it depends on their income. So one of the questions is, in terms of risk profile, of course, it's an emotional thing, it's an age thing, how close to retirement and all that, but it also is an income thing. Again, how much of your income is guaranteed or insured or consistent, irregardless of economic conditions? How secure is your income? That's going to impact your risk profile significantly. And if it's not so consistent and you have varying income, that's where having some money set aside in a safer bucket that has consistency, that has guarantees, that'll continue to earn and grow and be available for you, becomes imperative. The importance dramatically becomes obvious. And that's where your personal bank, for example, comes into play, where you can have that consistent, steady, ongoing source of growth and access to your funds. And today, for a lot of people with inconsistent income, that is abundantly important. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. This is the time, and all of this started a number of weeks ago when I first talked, this economic situation all started coming about. The first article I read that really kind of struck home for me was, this time it feels different. And it really struck a chord, because the reason why is most of the rules that we follow, hang in there, and our plans and what we do and stay consistent and whatever, and buy on the dips and all these various things, the advice that's given out there is fine for normal situations. But occasionally, and as I referred to then, 2000, the dot-com bubble, the Great Recession, and now it looks like this pandemic, are times where things are different. And now's the time when you really need to look at your situation, really assess your risk tolerance, and are you in the proper situation for that? And do you have the right fit for an advisor? In other words, are you jiving with them? Are they in line with what you're thinking? Are they preservation focused, or are they growth focused? Or how much so of that? And is it fit for you? I talk about good fits with financial tools all the time and folks being in tools that don't fit, putting a round peg in a square hole, if you will. But the same thing holds true for your advisor. And all I would say to you is, if the person you're working with doesn't feel like a good fit for you, or maybe now because of what's happened, contact us. Be happy to talk to you and talk to somebody with a preservation focus. Yes, we all love growth, but we need that preservation. We need that income, particularly in these times. Stay tuned in the last segment. I'm going to go into 10 facts you must know about recessions.
For more information on your personal bank, call Ference at 866-515-6280 or online at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to Your Personal Bank Show with President and Founder of Secure Estate Management, Ference Toth.
Well, usually I say we're rounding third and coming into home, but nobody's playing professional baseball right now, so I don't know if that's appropriate. But anyway, I am trying to make light of a situation that's not so pleasant in terms of from an economic standpoint, a financial standpoint. Again, as I shared in the other segments, I'm an optimistic person. I have great faith and hope in the American people and people in general. We'll get through this. The short-term pain, from a financial standpoint, looks like it's going to be pretty significant. Like I said, the questions I'm getting asked all the time right now is how bad will this get? I referred to an article called 7 Financial Heavyweights Forecasts. Go to yourpersonalbank.com, check it out, download it, pass it on, whatever. It is a great article talking about how the major players, the Goldman Sachs, JP Morgans of the world, all their economists are predicting somewhere between 15 to 30% GDP reduction in the second quarter of this year. That's significant when you put it into perspective. During the Great Recession in 08-09, the worst quarter was negative 8.4%. So they are predicting a 2 to 3 times worst case scenario or worse situation than then. So that's very significant. We all know unemployment has gone up. The CARES Act has been passed to help people out. But again, understand as helpful as that is for folks, it doesn't replace customers for businesses, and it doesn't replace jobs for people. It's a stopgap. It's a Band-Aid, if you will. It's helpful, but it doesn't solve the problem. And so hopefully the problem gets resolved sooner than that, which is the second question is how long will this last? And I went into previous segments, and there's articles on that, again, at yourpersonalbank.com that you can look at, download, whatever. And all the medical experts are talking about a period of several months at least. The president just recently talked about June 1st potentially being able to ease some restrictions to upwards of a year. So this is going to be something that's going to impact the financial economic situation for some time. Now, and then lastly, I was talking about, is there a good fit? Well, between your risk profile, the products, the financial tools that you're using, and maybe even the advisor that you're using. Are they growth oriented? Are they preservation oriented? Is there more of a balance? In other words, are you jiving with them? Now's the time. This is when things are a little different than the norm, when it's a good time to assess and really look at and take stock of your situation to see if you're in the right position, or if you just want a second opinion, contact us. Again, yourpersonalbank.com. But here's the thing. There's a great Kiplinger report article came out. It says 10 facts you must know about recessions. And I thought this was awesome. Again, it's on our website, yourpersonalbank.com, or you can look it up. But it talks about a few key things. I'm going to touch on a few of them. And it even talks about, what constitutes an official recession. Well, first of all, the committee, it's the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research, is the official arbiter, if you will. They're the ones that determine whether a recession, they officially determine the start and the end of recessions. Now, according to the NBER, how long do recessions typically last? Now, historically, you can go back all the way back in history, but if we look at the period since World War II, the average period is 11.1 months. And that's because we have things in place like FDIC and various things that have some safety nets in place. So recessions happen a little bit less frequent and don't last quite as long, but it's still, the average is 11 months. The Great Recession, of course, was a total of 18 months from 08-09 that we were in recession. Since World War II, the average time frame between recessions is 58 months, 58.4 actually, or about 5 years. Now, of course, our last cycle, we had an 11-month bull market, for example, so it was well beyond what was the normal average time frame between a recession. And, many people are talking about we were in the 10th inning with our economy and all those types of things. And here's what I want to say, and I've been saying this for quite some time now. If you listen to previous shows, you'll hear it's all recorded, so it's there on our website. I can't say what would be the next, things go in cycles, typically. And they always have, we'll put it that way. And we're experiencing that now, of course. And all my point was, it's not that we can predict the cycle. Can't predict what's going to happen or when. But it's natural to assume, based on previous history, that there would be cycles. And, of course, we're experiencing that as we speak. And to plan accordingly for that, based on the historical cycles that have occurred in the markets over the decades and decades, to plan for it, to have some of your portfolio in the safer buckets, okay, just makes sense, okay? And there's a well-known system called the 3-bucket system out there. And it's basically short, intermediate, and long-term money. You put your money in the 3 separate buckets. And short-term money, of course, is your 6 to 12 months of emergency funds. It's recommended to have just in case things like this happen. You have an impact in your income due to recession, for example, or unexpected medical or other situations that occur to people, job losses, business losses, whatever. The intermediate money should be the monies you're going to need to use in the next, say, 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 year range, depending on who you talk to. And that's monies that's safer, considered safer, hopefully interest-bearing, earns interest. Bonds are often used. Other things like real estate. Your personal bank fits into that category really well in terms of a consistent, steady Eddie income, not subject to the economy or market risk so much. And that's why we talk a lot about the safer bucket, that bucket 2. And, of course, the third bucket is your long-term growth bucket. And most people talk about, that's money you don't want to have to touch for 5 years at least. The longer, the better. And so much attention is paid to that third bucket. It seems like I see very little media, very little attention paid to the other 2 buckets. But it's during these crisis periods that the bucket 1 and 2 become so important. Again, if you have money subject to risk and you need access and use of that money in the near future, that's stressful. That's a problem. It's that money's that bucket should be in monies, that third bucket, long term. Again, monies you don't need to touch for a number of years. So a lot of people got away from that through the last economic cycle here, the growth, the bull market, let the equities, they ran long, and they got out of whack. And now's the time to reassess and look at that and get back in balance and work with the right financial tools and the right financial advisor to help you get there. Do you have an advisor who's preservation focused, who understands and encourages you to make sure you have that bucket 1 and 2 in place? Because right now, those become very important, especially if your income is subject to the economy or has been threatened or may have be gone already. That's critically important. The other thing in this article, I got off track a bit, and this 10 things you must know about a recession is, what's the worst effect? Well, the worst effect is, and it's an economist joke they talk about, it's not funny, but a recession is someone else loses their job, and a depression is when you lose your job. In other words, the loss of businesses and jobs have long-term effects, financial effects. And I talked about this in the previous segment. The longer this medical crisis lasts, the more impactful the economic effects will be. The more jobs and businesses will be lost, which will detrimentally affect ultimately the recovery. If we have higher unemployment and various things, less businesses around, that's going to hurt or put a damper, if you will, on the growth coming back. There'll be exceptions to the rule, of course. Some things are going to thrive. Some businesses thrive more in a recession than others. But in general, overall, that would be the net effect. So what can you do? Well, like I was starting to say, focus on your budget now. Where can you cut expenses? Where's your emergency cash reserves? Do you have enough set aside? Is that money earning anything? Is it in a place that actually can earn and have access? The Your Personal Bank tool can be a fit for that, for example. When do you need money from that growth bucket? Hopefully not for some time, so you have time to let it grow. If you don't, you need to I recommend meeting with an advisor and looking at where you can minimize the damage because you were out of whack, if you will, in your balance. These are things that you can do short-term immediately, and then meet with a preservation-focused advisor like myself who can help you make sure there's money there for when this all does blow over and things get better. It's not going to be all dark clouds. The sun will shine again. And as Churchill always would say, when they were going through World War II, we're all in this together. We will win. We will come out on the other side. There will be opportunities available, and you want to be able to take advantage of those financially and have those funds there to do so. Stay tuned every Tuesday at noon for the Your Personal Bank Show on Money Radio, 1510 AM or 105.3 FM. Hang in there, folks. We'll see you next week.
Listen next week at noon for more information on Your Personal Bank. Contact Ference at 866-515-6280 or online at yourpersonalbank.com.
Index annuities offer a fixed interest option and index interest options. Annuities with index options may be referred to as equity index annuities. The index options are not securities. You are not investing in stocks or in the indexes themselves. Credited interest does not include dividends paid by companies included in the relevant index. The credited index rate is linked, in part, to gains in any combination of indexes. You are not actually participating in the market or investing in any stock or bond. Index strategies may not be available in all states. Withdrawals may be taxable, and if taken prior to age 59 and a half, a 10% penalty tax may also apply.